Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have a guest from all the way from London. You probably know him really well, Simon Stevens, who is curator of the ship model and boat collections at the Nautical Maritime or National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, London. So, welcome, Simon, and pleasure to have you on board.
Hi, Mike. No, it's great fun to be here, actually. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So, I thought we just started. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to, be curator of the museum and the model
Yeah,
collection?
yeah. I suppose uh, if I go back to my teens, really, I mean, I've been interested as a very young boy with the sea and maritime interest because my father worked for the shipping company, P&O. So as a very young child with my brothers, we would go cruising every year at a staff discount, which was fun around the Mediterranean, North Africa, Black Sea, that sort of thing with P&O.
Hmm.
And then I suppose I went to college to study art and technical drawing. And during my holidays, school holidays, I volunteered at a local archaeological site. And I ended up drawing up the finds and the site plans for that dig, which went on for something like 20 plus years. It started off as a rescue dig. And we were literally in front of a gravel excavator. And as I say, it lasted 20 years. And then
Oh,
I
wow.
came in at the tail end of it. And I had the really great job of looking at all the finds in the bags, cleaning them, and drawing them for publication. That was only for a year. And just a month before that job finished, um, the job I'm in now was advertised at the National Maritime Museum as an
Okay.
assistant curator, trainee curator in the Department of Ships. Surprise, surprise, National Maritime Museum, Department of Ships, which covered a whole area of collections, including the ship models. So I applied for the job, had an interview, told them my background, my interests, and blow me down. I think out of 400 applicants, I got the job.
Oh, wow.
And I've been with the ship model collection now from day one since I joined. So that I'm in my 47th year
Oh,
with the
wow.
ship models. So I live and breathe ship models, as most people know. So
Oh, that's great.
um,
And so just kind of what's the role of a curator? What do you do on a
Well,
day-to-day
yeah, good
basis?
question. I mean, everyone thinks we just sit under a picture by a door next to a fire hydrant. That's the classic joke, and fall asleep. It's really varied. I mean, we answer inquiries, general inquiries, inquiries about the collections. We organise or we contribute towards loans in and loans out of objects.
Mhm.
We have to do valuations. We have to draft up exhibitions, touring exhibitions, permanent galleries. We do research for lectures, articles, and books, and it just goes on. We have to meet VIPs and take them around the museum. Particularly if they're involved with fundraising, because as most museums are nowadays, a large part of our job is fundraising.
Right, right.
Because obviously, even though we're a government funded um, we still have to raise a lot of money ourselves. The grant doesn't go up, but obviously everything else goes up. So
Right.
we're constantly having to raise money. So that's a big part of the job. I mean, and the great thing about being a curator of collections is that you've got this really in-depth knowledge that your colleagues in the fundraising or development section haven't got. So between the two of you, you have to sort of, come up with a plan to sort of
Mhm.
bring these people in and hopefully sign a check or whatever and support a gallery. So
Right. What's your
so that's
favorite part?
Oh wow, cool. I love networking. So
Mhm.
I love meeting and greeting people and talking to them and putting two and two together. I mean, I always regard my job, and I've said this many times, as a sort of conduit between the collection and the person asking the question, which can be anyone. It can be a child, it can be a corporate, it can be a model maker, and I'm the sort of link between hopefully finding the answer and sending them away happy. So I suppose that's what I really enjoy. And then as a curator, you're always looking for interesting objects that are hidden
Mhm.
away in some collection or house, undiscovered. It's a bit like the Antiques Road Trip. You find amazing objects.
Right, right.
Oh, wow. And I've had a few of those moments over the years where I've come across something that has never been seen before for many, many years and end up sort of either acquiring it or, telling them what they've got and what to do and that sort of thing. So,
What was the most exciting thing you found?
Wow. I mean, obviously, one of my big areas of interest and specialization is the Navy board ship models.
Hmm.
And we can talk about those in a minute. But I've come across, I think, probably two or three in private hands, which nobody knew about.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool. And when those turn up, I mean, there aren't many left in the world. I mean, I think the grand total, we've got about, I think we've got 65 in the collection, and there are another 95 known models out around the world
Hmm.
in museums or private collections. So there aren't many of them, and these models are what we call the Navy board style from 1650 through to the late 18th century. Really important scale models. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably one of the coolest things
That's
I've done. Oh, yeah,
sort
pretty
of like
neat.
finding the, Babe Ruth baseball card in,
Oh yeah,
in your attic.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And they come in various shapes and sizes, and also condition is another thing. People don't realize how important they are and how fragile they are. So
yeah.
of course, they're either covered in dust. I mean, if they're rigged, they're all damaged because I mean rigging on a model is just a complete nightmare. It's asking to be damaged. So
Yeah.
it's no, it's really interesting. And also I look after, as well as the ship models, I look after a large collection of full-size boats,
Okay.
from coracles right the way through to sailing coasters, that sort of thing.
So the scale 1-to-1 models.
Yeah, exactly. Big boys, yeah. So, and one of the special ones I look after is the James Caird lifeboat, which was Shackleton's boat that they used to, um, uh, you know, he rescued his crew once the
Right.
Endurance sunk in the ice. So, yeah, that's one of my highlights is looking after that.
Oh,
So,
wow. That's great. A little bit talk, maybe we could talk a little bit about that in a
yeah,
little bit.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
so tell us, I guess, more about the model collection. Like, how big is it? Where is
Yeah.
it?
Okay. The model collection numbers about 4,500 in
Mm,
in total. It's thought to be the largest collection in the world, but I sort of qualify that with there's a collection in Hamburg
mhm.
which numbers 18,000, which
Oh, wow.
mainly comprises of 1 to 1,200 scale models. These small waterline, like what we would call recognition models. So it depends how you quantify size. But anyway, it's recognized as one of the largest and most important collections in the world. The earliest model dates from 1800 BC, which is an Egyptian funerary barge from Thebes, right the way through to a container ship that was built 2 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
So within that range, you've got warships, merchant ships, lifeboats, tugs, you name it. We've got models of them really. So to have a collection that broad, you've got to have the knowledge and the
Yeah.
technical understanding that goes with it, which is really good actually. It gives you a great grounding for anyone that comes up to you and says, "Oh, what about this?" or "Can we find that?" or "Can we do a gallery on this?" And 9 times out of 10, we've got a model that will actually do the job or something similar. So it's a really, flexible and important collection. So that's the sort of broad range of the collection. Um, and we
And I'm curious, sorry to interrupt just quick.
no, no, sure.
So 4,500 models, like I assume you've got everything's cataloged, everything's, is everything
Pretty
written up?
much, yeah.
And so you have a database where you can just say, I need this model and
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we've got an internal database, MIMSI, where they're catalogued to a basic level. Some are catalogued more than others. I mean, obviously the ones that have been in the books that we've written, they're more catalogued. But we've also got probably 95% of the models are online on our collections online, so you can
okay,
access them anywhere in the world, and there'll be a catalogue entry there plus images if we've taken photographs of the models. So
gotcha.
yeah,
And
really.
out of the 4,500, how many are actually on display at any given time?
Good question. Probably about 10%.
Okay.
Bearing in mind, the other collections we've got 5,500 oil paintings. I mean, over 1 million ships plans. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, like all big museums, you can't display everything all the time. But bearing in mind, models are made from a range of materials. Wood, metal, textiles. They do require rotations because obviously some of the materials are light sensitive.
Hmm.
So we have to rest them, and it's the same for paper collections as well and
Oh,
paintings.
interesting.
They can't just stay on display forever and a day unless they're in a very, very controlled environment in a gallery where the lights are dim and the humidity is controlled as well. So
Right.
yeah, and we loan out a lot of models that both nationally as well as internationally as well.
Oh,
So
can I
that's
borrow one for my house?
Yeah, just send me an email. I'll see what I can do.
So how often do you rotate them? Like, how long will they stay on display?
It depends on the model and also the display. I mean, we have temporary exhibitions which last from anything from 6 months to 12 months, and then the permanent galleries are normally 5 to 10 years. And then within that span, depending upon the theme and the models that are in there, we can rotate them every 3 years, every 5 years. It does vary, to be honest. There's no sort of set rule. As I say, it really depends upon, the materials that the model
Got
is
it.
made.
But it can be out as long as 5 years. It's not like
Oh yeah,
every
yeah.
6 months.
Or even longer. I mean, some of the big 20th century builders models, which are all they're wood and brass and gold and silver plated, they'll stay up for, 10, 15 years as long as there's no silk on in the rigging or on the flags and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely no problem. And
It,
obviously
what
the modern ones that we commission, they can stay out even longer because they're made of modern materials.
so that's interesting. You guys actually will commission models to be built for the
Yes,
collection.
absolutely. I was going to come on to that because over the years we've had a whole range of themes that we cover. Exploration, um, you know, uh, all sorts of things, wars, fishing, that sort of thing. And for those either galleries or exhibitions, we may not have a model that really fits the bill. So we will actually commission a model maker or a company of model makers to make a scale model for us. And nowadays we tend to section them. So
Mhm,
on the one side of the model, you've got a full hull model. On the other side, we've cut away the hull to show the interior, just to make it a bit more interesting
mhm,
for the sort of wider public. I mean, the most recent one I commissioned was 2 years ago, the polar research ship, the Sir David Attenborough,
mhm.
which is currently down in Antarctica. And that was a big, large scale model, 1:100, of about 5 to 6 foot long. And again, we had a full hull on the port side, and on the starboard side, it's sectioned to show
Okay.
the different parts. Because if you look at it from the outside, it's actually quite boring. A lot of the equipment, even the fixtures and fittings on deck, are all covered because
Right.
obviously of the terrain it operates in. So the really interesting parts are inside the actual hull as well,
Oh,
like the
interesting.
so.
Um, and what is your sort of favorite either genre, your favorite model? Like if you were going to
Yeah.
take one out of the museum yourself and put it in your house, what would
Well,
it be?
people ask me this all the time, and I've got a top 10, and even that's a tough one. I suppose it's a toss up between the Navy board models or the Georgian models, which are a slightly different style to the Navy board. They're the sort of fully planked, more finished, more clinical models in the
Okay.
collection that date from about 1710 right the way through to 1830, that sort of date. And we've got some absolute stunners in that. Some of them were made for George III, which were absolutely top quality. And we know who made them, where they were made, and why they were made as well. So those are really important because what we tend to find, certainly in the 17th century, but not so much in the 18th century, we know very little about the model makers, very, very little.
Right.
So even though we've got the archive that survives, it seems to have been a very almost like a pastime in the Royal Dockyards. It wasn't an official job in the dockyards. It was something that the master shipwrights would certainly either commission or do themselves to promote their ideas.
Mhm.
Um, but as Grant has said in his earlier interview, I sort of many years ago, I pioneered the use of fiber optics and endoscopes
Yeah, I
going
wanted to
in.
talk about that because
Yeah.
you started doing that, and so tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's an interesting story because it all started when I was down in our photo studio many years ago, back in the early 80s. And one of our big terrestrial globes was being photographed. And they were trying to, and it was a conservation project, so they were trying to repair it. And obviously, globes are made of wooden and plaster sections and then glued together with paper. And the only way into a globe is through the poles at the North and South Pole. And someone had the bright idea of using a borescope, which is like a rigid endoscope. It's an
Mhm.
engineering tool for going inside engines and brick walls and that sort of thing. And at the time, I had a model waiting. I was next in line to get the model photographed. And I was just looking inside this globe and thinking, oh, this is amazing, seeing how it's built. And I said, can we do that with that model over there? So I poked it inside the model and oh my goodness me. I mean, it just, it just ballooned. I went away and I thought I'm going to go and look on all the models, and the stuff I found in there, the detail that you wouldn't see with the naked eye. You can see where they've been repaired,
Hmm.
which you can't really see from the outside, but from the inside you can.
Oh,
So it's a
interesting.
good conservation tool. And then latterly, like Grant and other people, I've found notes inside the models from the makers as well, which is
Oh,
very
wow.
exciting, very exciting.
What's kind of the most exciting thing or the most unusual thing you found in one?
I suppose there's a three-decker 90 gun of about 1703 5, and I went into the stern cabin areas where the officers were, and along either side of the cabin were these little small paintings of these allegorical figures about the size of a sort of postage stamp,
Wow.
painted actually onto the inside of the cabin, and absolutely mind-blowing,
And it's
Other
never,
things
you can't even see it from the outside at all,
not
right?
really, no. You
Yeah.
need special lighting. I mean, with some of these models, the deck has been removed to throw lighting into the model, but even then you struggle. But it's, the other thing is you go inside and you go along a gun deck and you can see all the cannons on their carriages. It's literally like walking along a warship.
Yeah.
And
I've
you can
seen
go
some of
down
the
into the
videos.
Malta. Yeah.
And
Oh, they're incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I've
why do
now
you think that,
upgraded.
what's that?
Sorry. I've now upgraded from a sort of rigid boroscope to a very high-tech medical endoscope, which is
Okay.
a flexible one. So you can actually articulate the end and actually go around obstacles in the model. Because bearing in mind, these models are made from woods using like very old and brittle glues like fish glue and that sort of thing. So of course you don't really want to be crashing into things in there, otherwise it'll just implode. So
Right.
having a flexible endoscope that you can actually steer and it's digital, so you can record it on a digital format video as well as take screen grabs is absolutely amazing. And
Yeah.
there are two formats. There's the one that goes down the throat, which is a laparoscope, which is about 3 mil in diameter,
Okay.
and the other one is much longer and bigger, and you don't have to imagine where that one goes. So I'll tell you, it breaks the ice when I do these live demonstrations with the audience because the people who have suffered that sort of treatment, they go, "Oh my goodness me!" You know,
So do you go into
so
the stern on those?
that's a sideline, yeah. That's right. And another way of looking at the models also, which again using medical technology, is putting them through CT scanners and X-rays, which is amazing because obviously you can't see everything with an endoscope, but there are things in there you think, oh, I'd like to look closely at that. And with a CT scan, as long as it's not rigged, because a CT scanner is like a giant uh, polo mint, like a round scanner.
Mhm.
So a rigged model doesn't work well, as you can
Right.
imagine. But the great thing about CT scanner is it sections the model digitally and you can see all the grain and how it's all made up with all the fixings in there. And then you can reconstruct it and articulate it as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
amazing tool. But obviously they don't come cheap. You have to sort of borrow time from your nearest hospital and say, can we put this model through one of your scanners, please?
Right.
And they're more than happy to do it because it's a great training thing for
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Well, some of the models have got bone in, some of them have got metal, brass, copper, and and like the human body, there are metals in the human body as well, and it's a great way of actually you get a lot of flares come off when you scan a model that's got metal in it, CT scan it, so it's a great way of controlling that and getting a good image. So,
Yeah. So like, and I've seen some of the videos, and I mean the detail that is there and not visible outside. Like, why do you think they did it? Was it just
oh,
the love of the
yeah,
game, or?
yeah, $20 million question. Everyone asks me that, why did they do it? And I said, I mean, I've spoken to a number of model makers over the years, and it's down to pride, I think. That's in the majority of cases. There are other ideas where the models were built in stages. So they would build the hull with a lower gun deck and possibly an upper gun deck, and then that would be talked about or signed off. But I don't really follow that theory. One, it's too time consuming, too costly. And a lot of these really high-end models were commissioned for, I think, wealthy individuals. Well, we know some of them were, rather than as a design tool. The more basic, plainer block models were the models that we use together with the plans for
Mhm.
design and building. So, yeah, it's a funny one, that. And I mean, clearly, the guys that put notes inside models wanted them to be found at some point.
Right.
And the only way you would find that note is by literally taking the model apart,
Yep.
you know, carefully,
I
or it
don't think
falls
they
apart.
saw an endoscope in the future back
Oh
then.
no, absolutely not. So they had no idea with that. I mean, they could throw light into a model with a candle with a highly polished surface that would, like an escutcheon that you have on a wall and stuff. So
Yeah. And I understand you found a dead body in a model.
dead body. Well, we've found insects in there and bits of tools and things and bits of model have fallen in. Obviously, when they're finishing it off, and they couldn't retrieve them. But one of the models I went in, which was I think the Ipswich of 1740, 1730. I was poking around in the hold and that's a Georgian model. So as opposed to a Navy War model, which is where the frames are exposed below the waterline in a
Mhm.
stylized fashion, the Georgian models are made from a bread and butter construction. So horizontal planks glued together and shaped, and then gouged out internally to reduce the weight, and then they'll plank over that. So obviously, when you go down below the gun deck, you've just got a carved open hull. And I went inside the Ipswich model, and there's this big ball of rubbish and fluff and stuff like that. And I saw this foot sticking out, or something, something like looking like a foot. So I gently moved the rubbish and stuff out of the way, and there was this figure just lying flat in the hold. Now it was either used as it was a scale figure, so it was in scale with the model, which was
Mhm.
really interesting, and it was cut out from an etching, so it was actually printed as an etching. Now, it was either put on the deck to give someone the idea of scale, and then obviously it fell into the model,
Mhm.
or the model maker thought it would be fun just to pop it into the hold and say, sadly, there's nothing on the back of it. I was hoping to find a signature and things like that, but I've got a great bit of video footage of me using these medical tools on the end of an endoscope, which is fantastic, like pliers and grabbers and things, trying to get this out because I had to go down one gun deck, go along the gun deck and then down another hatch into the lower hold. I mean, and that's the beauty of a flexible endoscope. You can
Yeah.
do that. Whereas a rigid boroscope, you've got no chance. And then you've got these tools at the end of the endoscope. You can send down the endoscope and retrieve stuff. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Really, it's fascinating to do. It really is. And I haven't
Gotta be
done
kind
all
of
the
scary
collection
to,
stuff.
I'd be like nervous to like, bump up against any cannon or
Oh
any.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the problem you've got is that, especially with the Ipswich, was rigged with original rigging, mid
Oh, wow.
18th century rigging. So it's incredibly fragile. I had a colleague who had to hold the endoscope because these things have a mind of their own. If you're turning I've got the control piece, but then the rest of it going back to the light box, that can just go anywhere. So, it's almost like a tug of war. You're all holding it and making sure it's not catching the rigging. So you've got to be incredibly careful. And getting in is one thing, but getting out is another thing.
Yeah.
A couple of instances where I've been stuck. I've gone in so deep.
Oh, no.
I can't get it out. So I have to sort of, try and work out whether I went left, right, up, or down with the end, and then just slowly work my way out. So, yeah, you
Wow.
have to do a couple of rehearsals and things like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't leave it in the model for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
No, that was
Now,
pretty cool pulling him out.
yeah, that's neat. And it was, you're certain it was from the same time that it was built. It
Oh,
wasn't.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it depicts a shipwright because he's got a cap on his head, a typical shipwright's cap. So that's really interesting. And the dress, even though it's quite basic, is absolutely right for the period, mid 18th century. So.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, And with 4,500 models, I imagine they're in various states of repair. Like, do you guys do your own repairs and restorations internally, or how does that work? And what's that process like?
We've always had, luckily for us, ever since I joined the museum in the late 70s, we've always had a conservation studio, which covers a whole range of objects. But we've been lucky in that we've had one or two conservators who are specifically for the ship model collection because it's so big and so important. And over the years, we've had them, repaired and restored. And when we did the big move from our old store, which was close by to the museum, down to our new store at Chatham Historic Dockyard, um, we did a lot of conservation work to make sure that they were fit enough to travel. And at the
Mhm.
same time, we got them all photographed digitally, which allowed us to put them all online as well, which was a really good result for us. So, yes, we're very lucky in that even today, we've got a dedicated conservator that looks after the ship model collection. And it's the same with the paintings and textiles because they're so important and so large. there's enough work there to keep them going until they retire, and they're all in their sort of 20s at the moment, so
Right.
no problem. So yeah, we do restore stuff on site,
Oh,
but we
that's
have to
cool.
send specialist stuff off site in other collections because we just haven't got the capacity. So.
Yeah. And with, the other with 90% of the collection sort of in under wraps, like can somebody arrange tours or like can you
Oh,
just
very much so.
oh
We
yeah.
encourage it, absolutely. I mean, it's a public collection. I mean, we do store tours down at Chatham Historic Dockyard where we take a small group of people round. Um, we get a whole range of inquirers coming in to look at models, authors, divers. They come in and they want to see a ship in a three-dimensional form rather than a big flat mess on the seabed.
Oh, interesting.
So then we get a lot of those. We get authors, we get family historians, we get a truckload of model makers, as you can imagine,
Right.
art historians. It's an endless range, which is great because I try to get the model collection out there. They're not just there as a static, display object. There's this whole range of uses that they can be used for. In terms of they're a reference collection at the end of the day, a three-dimensional reference
Yeah.
collection that go hand in hand with the paintings or the ship's plans. Because some of the models predate ship's plans as well, in the
Yep.
17th century. So.
Yep. And so then going back to the Navy Board collection, how does
Yeah,
obviously, a lot of people who would listen to this certainly know about the Rogers collection we have
yeah, yeah,
here. So
sure.
how does that compare?
It compares very well. In fact, I mean, it's a really good even spread. I mean, as Grant said, that the likelihood is that Samuel Pepys may have had his fingers on some of ours as well as the Rogers collection in Annapolis. We can't be sure, hand on heart, as to which ones he had. We know he had a model collection, and obviously Sargison, who sort of took over from Pepys as Secretary of the Navy and Clerk of the Acts. Um, you know, that collection has got a direct link with that position. So it's intriguing to think that they were part of their collection. But yes, I mean I suppose there are areas in our collection and that collection where they're better, same or worse. They're not as
Mhm.
so it's a nice sort of balance really. It's a nice spread as well as other private collections as well. So, but yeah, we're fairly well off. We've got a very good range of 17th and 18th century models if you compare the Rogers collection and ours.
Mhm. Okay. And do you have a favorite in within that, the Navy of the Navy Board models? Is there
One of the standouts for me is the model of the St. Michael, which was launched in 1669, a second-rate 90 gun, which was at the Battle of Solway, and
and that's
uh,
rigged, right?
that's fully rigged. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was rigged later in the 1930s. We don't know whether it was, well, we know the masts, the lower parts of the masts are original because again, I've been inside the model and you can actually tell by looking at the lower part of the mast inside the model that it's contemporary, i.e. it was made at the same time the model was.
Okay.
So that's a really interesting model, very important ship. We've got lovely drawings by the Vanderbilts of the ship itself and the carving. And we've also got a lovely portrait of the captain and commander. And in recent years, we found his will when he lived down in Yarmouth on the Isle of Wight in the UK on the south coast. And on that is noted he had two ship models. So we're saying pretty much that model of the St Michael probably belonged to the captain of the
Oh
ship,
wow.
whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm desperately trying to think of his name. But, so that's one of my favourite, I suppose, because it's a named vessel. It's a beautifully made, fully rigged, with all the carved decoration on it in the Navy Board style. Great history. We've got drawings by the Vanderbilt. It's got everything going for it. So yes, Holmes, that was his name, the
Arms,
captain.
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's neat. Um, and then what's kind of latest what's going on with the museum now? What are you guys working on or what projects
Wow,
are you involved in?
it's been pretty much full on for the last couple of years. I mean, we're literally today, quite literally today, our Pirates exhibition is opening. So we've been working on that for the last couple of years. We've also celebrating the 350th anniversary of the observatory up on the hill.
Hmm.
Story of Time that's coming up in a couple of years. So we're flat out on that. Where we just had our roof repaired over at one of our major galleries, the Neptune Court. So we've had to close some of the surrounding galleries and that big gallery so that the roof can be repaired. So we've been working on the galleries where we've been tweaking, rotating, that sort of thing, because the time and the money is available to do that.
Right.
We're pushing books out as well on various subjects, from learned scholarly works through to publications for children, that sort of thing. So, it's a really busy time, and it just keeps on being busy. There's no there's no rest at all. So,
Well, that's good. And then what
yeah,
about
absolutely.
the Shackleton thing? You said you were
Oh yeah, that's another thing. But when I joined the museum, part of my collection, or the collections I was responsible for, was the small boat collection, which at that time included the James Caird, Shackleton's boat that was used to go away and find help to rescue his crew. Because the story is obviously the Endurance got trapped in the ice, was then crushed, and then sank.
right.
They spent some time on the ice floating around. Then they sailed to Elephant Island and put up a camp there. And then Shackleton and some of his crew upgraded what was then a double-ended ship's lifeboat. They raised the gunwales and put a wooden deck across with canvas to make it watertight. And they then sailed to South Georgia to raise the alarm, which they did. They made it was an incredible. I mean, the boat journey itself is just incredible. And they managed to raise the alarm. And then some weeks later, they came back and picked the rest of the crew up. So he didn't lose a single person.
Yeah, it's
It's
unbelievable.
an amazing story. And obviously, I looked after the James Caird while it was at the museum. It was on loan. One of our previous directors saw it languishing in the grounds of Dulwich College, which is where Shackleton went to school.
Okay.
Some years later, when the boat made it back to the UK, that's a long story. It was presented back to the college, and it just lay in an outhouse. Was nearly bombed in the Second World War. It missed narrowly being bombed,
Oh, wow.
and then it just laid sort of semi-derelict in the ground. So one of our previous directors said, "Oh, we'd love to have that on display." He recognised the importance of it, so we brought it back, restored it, and it went on display for many, many years. And then we had to change our displays, and we sent it back to Dulwich. And since then, it's been to Australia, New Zealand, America, Germany. I mean, the air miles that boat has done is incredible. And of course, because I curate it, I have to de-rig it, pack it into a container because you can't put it into a jet. It's too big
Okay.
into air. And then I have to meet at the other end, rig it up for the exhibition, come back 6 months later or a year, go back out there, de-rig it, put it into a container, and then meet at this end, and then re-rig it for Dulwich College, the display. So it's quite a job, but it's an amazing privilege, which
Oh,
I've
yeah.
done for 47 years, and it's wherever it goes, it really does create this amazing amount of interest.
That's
Quite right.
Where is it now?
It's back at Dulwich College,
It is. Okay.
in a purpose-built new wing, the James Caird Hall, which is a new science block they had made some years back. So, and
Gotcha.
beautifully displayed as well. And it's not open to the general public, but you can email or ring the college and ask to see it. And they've got a set day when they'll let you in and you can have a look at the boat. So,
Interesting. Well, that's good to
yeah.
know. And I'm curious, do you build ship models yourself at all?
I
You
have done in the past, absolutely. I mean, I suppose I got interested in models as a kid. I used to build airfix kits. And then latterly, since working at the museum, I basically clean and restore models as a sort of sideline, as an interest. You learn so much when you make or you repair models, especially rig models. That's my specialisation is
Mhm.
sailing models. And I've also built a number of models in the past, a couple, one, voted model for a church and stuff like that. So yeah,
Working
I'm
on
not, I'm
anything
not a
now, or you
prolific David.
probably don't have the time?
Sorry.
I was gonna say, you working on anything now? You probably don't have the time with all.
I've got a couple of things on the go, a couple of restoration, cleaning and repairs, but nothing major at the moment. No, I've been flat out on work at the museum. I'm also trying to carry on with the research on my book for the Georgian ship models, which is a follow-on from the Navy ship model book. So yeah, there's a lot to be done really. So yeah, it's a nice thing to do, but I'm finding it harder to do. So.
Yep. I hear you. Well, this has been great. Anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything that
Oh, I suppose the other thing was that some years ago, the collection was stored just off site, and it was very near a major road going into London. We were being threatened with compulsory purchase because they wanted to reroute that road. So we then had to find a new place for the store. And we were looking around and we wanted somewhere relatively close. And to cut a long story short, we ended up at the Chatham Historic Dockyard, which was handed over by the Navy in the 80s to a trust. And it's a combination of commercial, residential, and heritage sites on there. And the last building on that site that was derelict was the smithery, which was an early 19th century building where they did a lot of the metalwork. They bent iron frames for warships, that sort of thing, founded anchors and that sort of thing. And they wanted the building restored. We needed a building to put our new store in.
Mhm.
So the two of us got together, made an approach to various funds, including the Heritage Lottery Fund. I love the idea. So they got their building restored, and we got our model store, which is state of the art.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the majority of the models are kept. And again, we encourage visits to that. So that's been really good. And that was why we did the restoration and photography of the models prior to the move, so that they've gone down to Chatham now. So,
So you've got a few thousand models in this store.
oh yeah,
How did
absolutely.
that move work?
Wow, very carefully, and it took a while. I mean, the problem we had with the store was that, unbeknown to us, when it was handed over, they sealed the floor with a chemical, which then reacted a couple of weeks later and gave off gassed.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite distressing. So we had to stop the whole process because we were all ready to go. We got the lorries in place, everything's palleted and settled down in these special cases, and we were loading them on, and everything had to be stopped while they sorted out this floor problem. So they had to take it back. We lost 6 months on that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but I mean, I suppose overall the actual movement of the models from that store, and it's about a 17-mile journey from Greenwich to Chatham on the
Okay.
Medway. Probably took us about 6 to 8 months, and it was just lorry loads of models arriving. And the great thing about this building, because it's so large, we could literally drive the lorries in through these big gates.
Oh, wow.
We could unload undercover as well, straight into the storage blocks. So it was fantastic.
So
So
weather wasn't an issue
great
at
job.
all or anything then?
No, absolutely. That was our saving grace, really. We were able
Yeah.
to move time. So, and there's also a permanent gallery there, showing a range of the models next to the store as well. So,
Well, I can't wait to go see
well,
it.
you've got to come over and see it.
I will.
Absolutely.
I'll
Must
let,
you
I'll
must
let you
come
know when
over.
I'm there. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
well,
anyone
so
else who's interested, get in touch with me.
that's great. Yeah, and I'll provide
Yeah, I'll
details
send
in
it.
the show notes for
Yeah,
everybody. So,
fantastic.
well, Simon, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time on
My pleasure.
this. It's an amazing collection. I've only got to see parts of it, so I definitely want that sort of behind the scenes tour next time I'm out in London.
Yep.
And I'll definitely give you a ring. So, and I encourage everybody who hasn't been out there to do so and let
Great.
Simon and his team know you're coming. It's
Yeah.
great. So, well, thank you very much. It was great
Pleasure.
chatting, and
Yep.
we'll talk. We'll have you on again soon.
Fantastic. Look forward to it. Okay.
Thanks, Simon.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.